Good morning, y'all. It's wonderful to see you and very, very nice to have you. My name is Azza Karam, and I am serving as the Director of the United Nations Program at Occidental College and as a President of Lead Integrity, which, if any of you are interested, happens to be the only Women of Faith founded, Women of Faith led international consultancy. And we're 2 years old, so we're celebrating our 2 years old today with you all. A warm welcome to all of you. I would like to introduce my co-moderator, Irene, who will say a few words about herself.
Thank you, Dr. Azza. Good morning, all. My name is Irene Anena, all the way from the eastern part of Uganda. I support the coordination role for the ACT Alliance in Uganda. Very happy to work with you, Dr. Azza. And of course, we're looking forward to this very interesting conversation ahead. Thank you.
We would like to begin, with your permission, with a moment of silence. As a group of people from different faiths, different countries, we all understand that the world could be a happier place. So let's take a moment to think of those who have lost their lives and their dear ones, but also those who are still struggling like each one of you to make our world a better place. Please join me in a moment of silence, starting now. Thank you very much. I've never understood why we wait till the end of an event to say thank you. I'd like to reverse that equation a little bit and begin by saying thank you to each of the absolutely wonderful team of organizers. If you haven't seen the logos, I urge you to please do see them, because we've been able, thanks to the tremendous goodwill and a lot of hard work, I want to begin by saying a big, heartfelt thank you to our colleagues from the government of Finland, the mission of Finland to the United Nations, but also ACT Alliance in Finland. And that brings me to ACT Alliance, who I consider to be my personal friends. So thank you very much also to our colleagues from Tanenbaum, who made this space and this entire convening possible. FELM, the Network of Religious and Traditional Peace Builders, the United Nations Office for Prevention of Genocide and Responsibility to Protect, UNDP, and all of you for being here today. It takes many hands to be able to come to a space of togetherness that is as interesting, I hope, and engaging as today should pan out to be. So a great deal of thanks if you'll allow me, given that I have the microphone, it's hard for you to intervene right now, but I would like to say a special note of thanks to Eli Khoury from Tanenbaum and Janie Dumbleton, but also from my heart to Rachel Taverner from ACT Alliance, who put everything together. Everything that you see in writing is from Rachel. And I just wanted to say, there's always somebody working really, really hard behind the scenes to bring us to this moment, and a great deal of thanks to each and all of you. Right, we have basically this entire hullabaloo is to look at two key questions. Now, I'm sure all of you have been to a number of different meetings where we always speak about how wonderful faith is, how important religious communities are, how we can't do anything, how the tipping point is religion. And that is absolutely true. But what we're doing today is qualitatively different. We're holding ourselves as faith-inspired agents and secular actors, the United Nations governmental, intergovernmental, and non-governmental actors. We're holding ourselves accountable to the issue of partnership. In other words, to what extent, what is the difference that partnership makes to the issues at hand right here, peace and security, safety for those who are most vulnerable, girls and women. What difference do the partnerships actually make in the lives of girls and women in situations of conflict? In case you haven't noticed, every single continent in the world has somewhere on fire, literally. If it's not because of human-made, and you notice I didn't say man-made, that I take credit for that, human-made issues, but if not human-made issues, it will be environmental issues. So there is no place that is actually totally safe and secure, and especially vulnerable are girls and women, not only, but especially. What is the difference that partnerships between faith-based, faith-inspired actors among them, but also between them, governments and intergovernmental organizations, what difference is it making? Can we hold ourselves accountable to making that difference? And if we can't, what need we do to make sure that there is an accountability for the impact, the difference, that tipping point that partnerships between and across all sectors actually makes. So we are not going to belabor how wonderful religions are, especially not in this time, but we will make sure to belabor and underline how valuable working together and having to accommodate one another in order to service others. How important is that? How do we hold ourselves accountable to that? So without further ado, we have been incredibly fortunate to have with us today the State Secretary, Ms. Laura Rissanen, and I do apologize if I've mispronounced that. Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Right. So Ms. Laura Rissanen has served as a State Secretary to the Minister of Social Security since June of 2023. State Secretary Rissanen is responsible for European Union and international affairs that fall within the minister's area of responsibility and matters related to occupational safety and health, farm relief services, and gender equality. Rissanen has over 20 years of experience on policy making, ranging from municipality decision-making to European Parliament. She knows how decisions are made and the people behind the decisions. She's highly familiar with urban policy, urban planning, and the Finnish education system, and she's held numerous positions of trust, including being a city council member for many, many years, and she holds a master's degree in social sciences, majoring in political history. Now, because she's state secretary, she gets the full intro, which is only 1/10 of her achievements. I do need to warn you that everyone else is going to be introduced by their title and the organization that they're from, and the full bios are present in the concept note that has gone around viral over the world. I do encourage you to check it out. In the meantime, State Secretary, we are delighted to have you. Very welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you and good morning to you all. It's always wonderful to see a room full, almost full, even though it's raining outside. Our permanent representative said on Saturday that we brought the summer with us from Finland, and you all know that that's not true. We don't have summer in Finland yet, but maybe we are taking it with us now. We're going home this evening. This is my third time at CSW, and it's been quite an experience again, but I'm really happy that I'm able to speak here today. I think the events that we have with the civil society are a really crucial part of this week, and it's the week, and these are the places where I can get, the most truths about what really is happening around the world. So I really thank you all for coming to New York and sharing your experiences. But today, we are here to discuss the rights of women and girls in conflicts and the role of faith-based actors in conflict resolution and peace building. And I'm happy to have the honor of opening this event, and I thank all the organizers again, as both of these themes are long-term interests and a strong priority to Finland. We are all aware that peace and security landscape has changed. As we already heard, there's a fire going on almost everywhere. Most conflicts take place and they affect women and civilians more than ever. At the same time, there are less formal peace processes and less women are included in conflict management and peacemaking. This situation casts a shadow over attempts to build sustainable peace. In this situation, one might feel paralyzed. However, we must never give in. We must always be bolder and louder. We have the tools and knowledge for comprehensive and lasting conflict resolution and must continue working together to implement them. One of the key tools, of course, is gender equality. We know from our experience in Finland that advancing gender equality boosts economic growth and reduces poverty. But we also know that it fosters social justice and enhances peace and stability. And this ultimately benefits the whole society. Gender equality is therefore also a peace enabler. In conflict areas, ensuring the rights of women and girls helps the whole society to recover from conflicts faster. Access to health services, including sexual and reproductive health and rights, or functioning systems on reporting and accountability on gender-based violence make a difference not only for an individual, but for the whole society. On the other hand, making sure that women and youth are included in peace efforts, from early ceasefire negotiations to post-conflict reconstruction and recovery, has long-term positive impacts on lasting peace. And this is also a key message that I want for us all to remember. Dear friends, religious and traditional peacemakers play a key role in helping us to understand the underlying causes of crises and to prevent them. They are also often well connected to grassroots actors, which makes them well-based to build trust and dialogue in crisis-affected areas. In this role, they can also be important facilitators of inclusive participation and ensuring that also the rights of women and girls are guaranteed. They have the ability to transfer gender norms and that hinder the agency of women. The Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers is a key partner to Finland in peace mediation. Its truly global status gives it a unique position to promote inclusive and participatory peace building and conflict resolutions all over the world. The Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs has supported the network from the start and will continue to do so also in the future. Dear friends, last year, as we all know, we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the landmark resolution of the Security Council on Women, Peace and Security. I think we still have a lot to do in implementing that resolution when we are looking around the world on what's happening in peace negotiations. But the resolution continues to offer a robust framework for inclusion and more sustainable conflict resolution. So today, it is time to focus on putting this framework in practice and defend the commitments that we have all made together. I hope through today's discussion, we can identify some concrete ideas for taking this joint effort forward. I really look forward to a fruitful discussion. I know we have very good panelists here today. And thank you again. And I hope you have a very good time, whether in New York or wherever you're going from here.
Thank you very much, State Secretary. Very, very delighted to have you, and thank you for the key points and messages that you brought out. I am especially grateful that you mentioned the Network of Religious and Traditional Peace Builders. My brother, Dr. Muhammad Sanusi, sits and will be speaking together with our esteemed General Secretary of the ACT Alliance and a number of other practitioners later. I just want to have you now direct your attention to the screens, because we will now be listening to the key message from, keynote opening message from Mr. Chaloka Beyani. And I want to thank Simona Kuchani for making this possible. Like I said, it always takes a woman at the back, but men too. Mr. Chaloka Beyani was appointed Special Advisor to the Secretary General for the Prevention of Genocide at the Undersecretary General level in August 2025. He did not come a moment too soon. We're very delighted to have him with us. Before he had this distinguished position, he was the Associate Professor of International Law in the London School of Economics and Political Science. So without further ado, we will hear Mr. Beyani's message. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, dear panelists and participants, it is my pleasure to address you today in my capacity as the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, as the United Nations gather for the 70th Commission on the Status of Women. I regret not being able to be with you in person due to prior travel commitments, and I thank the organizers and our partners at the Lead Integrity, ACT Alliance, Tanenbaum Center, Occidental College, as well as the Permanent Mission on Finland to the United Nations and UNDP for making this event happen. I would like to begin with two important universal facts. First, prevention, which is the core of my mandate, means being proactive, not reactive, with unwavering and long-term commitment to justice and rights for all. Second, Women are central to all aspects related to genocide and atrocity prevention and punishment. When prevention fails and conflicts unfold, including when genocide is committed, women are the first target. And when violence subsides, they are at the forefront of ensuring that justice is served and of rebuilding shattered communities. We have seen it in Rwanda when Ms. Domitila Mukantangazwa helped transform the traditional concept of Gacaca codes into one of the biggest legal undertakings to seek and provide justice through more than 1.2 million cases pertaining to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. She worked not only to bring justice to victims, but also to bring Rwandans together after the horrors of the genocide. We have seen it in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the mothers of Srebrenica helped shape international criminal law with their fearless testimonies at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, which led the tribunal to determine that what happened in Srebrenica was genocide. They faced the perpetrators fearlessly and tirelessly, sought information about their missing family members for years. We're also seeing it now with the brave Rohingya women who have been through unimaginable suffering to reach the refugee camps in Bangladesh and who are now traveling from those camps to different courts across the world to testify and seek justice for the atrocious crimes committed against them and their community. And I have no doubt that women will continue to take a stand in a world afflicted by growing violence and atrocity crimes, because without women at the core, prevention is never holistic. The risk of violence relapsing is high. Peace is not sustainable if women are not at the table, and justice cannot be achieved in an inclusive way. Distinguished guests, I will never be tired to also emphasize the role of multi-faith partnerships in advancing atrocity prevention. Faith-based organizations are the threads of our social fabric. They are the connecting tissues of communities. And in the form of multi-faith coalitions, they are the living example that strategies aimed at atrocity prevention and accountability are more successful when they are based on a whole of society approach. Because multi-faith coalitions mirror the variety of humanity. The role of women in these multi-faith partnerships is so central. I'm sure that we'll hear many stories today about women of faith and about their support to the inalienable human rights of men and women globally, including in contexts at risk of genocide and other atrocity crimes. For this reason, I'm deeply committed to involve multi-faith coalitions in the implementation of the mandate I hold. In my office, we believe that they are great allies in fostering humanity, human dignity, anywhere, anytime, and in ensuring a more successful, inclusive, and just world from genocide. And for this reason, the UN Multi-Faith Advisory Council, comprising of 40 faith-based organizations, is one of my office's main interlocutors on matters related to atrocity prevention. Dear friends, it is my hope that at this 70th Commission on the Status of Women, we can identify ways in which we can all work better together to advance the common cause of peace and atrocity prevention, and to recommit to the rights of women and girls that in these difficult days are under unprecedented attack. We owe it to those who have fought and are still fighting for women's rights as human rights. We owe it to the victims and survivors of conflicts and genocide. We owe it to the future generations and to those who do not only dream of a better future, but take proactive steps to build it in the face of all odds, day in, day out. Please count on my support and that of my office, and I look forward to hearing about the event deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now are going to transition to a very important part, which is voices from women of faith. There's only one part. There's lots of voices you're going to hear here today, but voices of women of faith. That is a video compiled by our colleagues from ACT Alliance. And without further ado,
My name is Dr. Sarah Ahmed. I am a peacemaker and a humanitarian working in economic empowerment and sustainable development for peace building. I have spent over a decade of my life working in conflict zones, including multiple countries in Middle East, Latin America, and South Africa. And in this space, I want to be clear about something. In armed conflict, justice does not simply weaken, it disappears, especially for women and girls. Violence multiplies while protection collapses, the court system shut down, police system fracture, communities mainly retreat into fear. And survivors continuously are told to stay silent for the sake of honor. I have sat with hundreds of women and girls who were forced to choose between speaking the truth and being cast out of their own families.
In our community, conflict profoundly impacts women and girls in exposing them to various forms of violence. The breakdown of different systems during the conflict complicates their ability to seek justice. Many local leaders have provided support and safe space for women and girls, offering counseling, shelter, and also advocacy. They are also becoming vital links in the community, helping to bridge the gap left by the traditional systems. One of our impactful initiatives is utilizing the phase actors to provide community-based psychosocial support after receiving an intensive training in this area.
Quisiera también resaltar la experiencia misma de la participación de mujeres en la búsqueda de acuerdos de paz, pero sobre todo de que en esos acuerdos de paz también se integren enfoques de género y este enfoque también desde las mujeres de fe. En este caso, llevamos en este periodo de gobierno con la posibilidad de tener mujeres que participan, por un lado, en los mecanismos de gobierno, dialogando con un actor armado específico, pero también tenemos, por otro lado, de parte del Consejo Mundial de Iglesias, un acompañamiento de una mujer en una mesa también con un actor armado desde la sociedad civil. Estos espacios son muy importantes porque evidencian también el acceso de la participación de las mujeres en medio del conflicto.
Hello, this is Tariq from LWF Ethiopia. The North Ethiopian Tigray conflict has not only created displacement but also subjected women and girls to gender-based violence and left without having access to basic and essential services. Our organization has been responding to this and strengthening community-based response mechanisms by creating safe and functional referrals. So I would say that the UN agencies and various governments should support this so that the voice of the poor and the needy will be heard and a dignified and a safe service can be provided.
But if my work has proved anything, it proved that faith alone is not enough and institutions alone are not enough. Because transformation actually happens when faith leaders work hand in hand with everybody else. When they work with women-led organizations, legal advocates, government officials, and humanitarian actors, local and international. When this effort of protection is coordinated, when referrals are safe, trusted, and the narrative change is intentional. That is when justice begins to breathe again. In my line of work, access to justice in armed conflict is not a policy slogan. It is definitely a daily negotiation for survival. And if we are serious about protecting women and girls and reviving communities, we must invest in partnerships that is rooted in trust, not tokenism. The solutions are already there, happening locally, collaboratively, and powerfully. The question is whether we have the courage to scale them.
I'll hand over to my capable co-moderator, Irene. Irene, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Azza. And of course, very interesting and touching to hear the voices from the grassroots on the situation and what we are currently faced with. We shall be transitioning to our dialogue, and we have a panel of 8 people, and I'll be inviting them to take up the stage. I'll share a little, story when we arrived in New York a few days ago. And at the immigration officer asked, "What are you here to do in New York?" And we said, "We are for CSW." And the question he said was like, 70 years down the road, do you see any change? Do you see anything moving? And for me, that was really a question that has kept me pondering, because a lot of people are asking if there's progress in this agenda, but also questioning multilateralism. So in this next dialogue, we are going to be hearing how partnership can be a tool and what we have seen happen from the different experiences, live reality, from the people who will be invited on this stage to share their reflections in the panel session. So please allow me to invite Her Excellency Elina Kalku, the permanent, yes, I hope I didn't butcher, the permanent representative of Finland to the United States. Your Excellency, we are very happy to have you here. It's also an honor to invite Rodelma Difarai, the ACT Alliance General Secretary. Next to be on stage is Reverend Mark Ifola, the CEO of Tanenbaum. You're most welcome, Reverend. Please join me to welcome a speaker who is virtual, Christine. Christine, I need to board a plane to really learn to pronounce your name. So yeah, please join me to invite Christine. Christine is the senior lecturer for systematic theology and ethics at Zurich University and director of studies at the Center for Faith and Society at Freiburg University. Thank you so much, Christine, for joining us virtually and being able to speak to us. I hope you can hear us. Next with me is my sister from Uganda, Mrs. Lillian Musochi, the Humanitarian Response Manager, and from Uganda, Finchurch Aid. Thank you, Lillian. In Uganda, we use a lot of brothers and sisters. So yes, I call her my sister. Then we also have Mr. Mark. Unfortunately, he has sent in his apology. He's hospitalized. He should have been here. So we'll miss to hear from Mark today and keep him in your thoughts and prayers for a speedy recovery. Lastly, allow me to invite Dr. Mohammed, the Executive Director of the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. Yes, so to our amazing panelists, I'll start by saying that Arabia made that blessed are those who speak briefly, for they will be invited back. So yes, so if you really wish to be invited back to speak, you know the drills. So, but also just for the rules, we have 4 minutes each to respond to the 2 questions that you've already been provided with. But just to remind you, our first question will be looking at what difference do partnerships between faith-based and secular actors make for facilitating access to justice for women and girls in conflict and atrocity contexts. We will be happy to hear all your reflections, but then you will then follow into the why and how can diverse government and the oh yes, thank you very much, Eva. Mr. Hope T. Sisaya, I do apologize. You are our next panelist, and he's also online over there. Thank you very much for joining us. Yes, so the second question is why and how can diverse government and the United Nations support such partnerships to create the tipping point in current events, efforts to ensure women and girls survive conflict and atrocities and are integrated into mediation and peacemaking efforts with dignity and resilient. We had a lot of comments coming in from the previous speakers that we see that the faith platform is a powerful platform for ensuring respect, human rights, and restoring dignity. So I'll move to our first speaker, Your Excellency. What are your thoughts in regards to the difference that this partnership make in facilitating access to justice? Thank you.
Thank you. Great question, and thank you for organizing this event, and thank you also for bringing to us the comments from different countries. I think that was extremely useful. What difference can the partnership make? A huge difference, of course. I think when we talk about accountability, we also talk about prevention. And I think we're talking about the future. And if future doesn't look good from our perspective today, it could look better years ahead. And so I would contest a little bit this, nothing has happened in 70 years, because, for instance, in my country, it's a completely different world if you look backward 70 years. I wouldn't be speaking here as a female PR, by the way, 70 years ago. I think lots of things have happened, and it's good to look backwards sometimes to understand that change is possible. On the partnerships, I would like to begin by actually looking at the issue from the point of view of a victim. And I think the key issue is how the victims are treated, no matter whether we speak about faith-based organizations or governmental institutions or formal institutions. The fact that the victims can approach the government institutions or faith-based organizations, they need to feel safe. I think people don't report, especially sexual violence, if they don't feel safe to do so. So actually, safe access is, I think, a number one issue. I had a chance to visit a UN Women program in Tanzania once. There was a female police leader who was overseeing a program to make sure that victims of rape could report the crimes and that they could do it in a safe way. And I learned how many issues you have to think through to be able to actually make the space safe for the victims of those terrible crimes. And they were not conflict related, actually. It was just peaceful society where crimes took place. So I think the fact that the victims can approach faith-based organizations or government institutions, they will need to have trust to do so. They will need to feel that they protected and that they don't have to feel shameful for what was done to them. I think that is absolutely a key issue here, how we treat the victims. I think when we look at faith-based organizations, there's much better experts here in this room. But from my perspective, I think we've seen many cases where faith-based organizations, communities can approach people in areas where legal institutions are far away, may not exist at all, or are difficult to access, maybe because of different reasons. And faith-based organizations would have much better access to people. They're closer. They are everywhere. And sometimes are much easier to access overall. I think victim and witness support is something that is important to be looked at, no matter who is active, faith-based organization or an international actor or a local legal institution. I think that is hugely, hugely important. And we have to look at these kinds of things when we build partnerships between the two. But big difference can be made through this cooperation. I think this is a primary issue that we should look at in this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and of course for reminding us that change is possible and it's happening. And I resonate when you say most of us wouldn't be here if there isn't any progress being realized. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I'll move to the next speaker. Yeah, but also thank you for reminding us about the trust that has been invested in the faith leaders and being able to stand in those gaps where there is limitation to access to justice for survivors in many contexts. Thank you very much. I have Katrina here, who is going to be helping us to manage our time. So please look over. She's sitting very strategically with our paper to kindly remind us when you have a minute, and then when she says stop, please be nice, so then you can come back again. Yeah. So thank you very much. I'll be moving to the next speaker, and that is Delma. Her Excellency mentioned that the trust has been invested in the faith leaders, and of course they've stood in the gaps. So what are your reflections picking up from that conversation?
Thank you very much, everyone, especially the organizers of this event, which is not very common to see different actors sharing the same space. Government, multilateral organizations, civil society, and also faith communities. So I would like to link that with the topic of the discussion today, that is about justice for women and girls. When we speak about that, actually, immediately and very often, we think about courts, tribunals, we think about international law regulations, international regulations, legal frameworks. But actually, by experiences in all the countries where ACT Alliance members are operating, all these institutions do not exist. So basically, the discussion in terms of justice comes from the communities, comes from the relationships. And that starts basically by women of faith. And to try to keep my time, I will try to just to take some of the points. It's about relationships as well, and social norms, and often faith spaces that are created for promoting dignity of people. And the dignity is the beginning of justice. And that is exactly where faith communities, especially women of faith, are the ones that are leading these processes at community levels. And too often, sorry to be very blunt in that way, too often when we talk about international or justice, internationally, you are talking that in conference rooms, while women in conflict are negotiating their dignities in the communities. And these two pieces are not connecting, and we need to take that into account. I will not enter in the point in terms of the importance of faith-based organizations, because that was already mentioned by the previous speakers, but because faith communities hold something that many formal institutions struggle to have. That's trust. It was mentioned that here. And that is very much related to a topic that we are discussing today in the context of the world, in terms of the restructuring of the international institutions and also the multilateralism. That's about legitimacy. We need to go back and to understand what legitimacy means in terms of justice as well. Who are the actors that need to take this? But of course, when we talk about religion, we need to recognize that religion has not been always been promoting justice for women, rights for women. We know that. And that is, we have many cases where they are using that for justified exclusion, to silence survivors. That has been very much historically the action from many faith actors and institutions, or to legitimize what we know, the patriarchal norms and the structures that we face. But one thing that is important for us, it's to reflect that the question is not whether religion should be involved, but is The question is which religion voices should be amplified? Because if you see today, those progressive voices are facing difficulties to speak for protection issue, but also in terms of the financial support that is given for especially women-led organizations on the ground. So we need to think about how financing also is supporting patriarchal norms and retaining many of the points that we are not able to check. And but one thing that in the ACT Alliance context that we are very hopeful, it's that the women's are not only fighting or forgetting protection, but it's about also the changing the narratives that are promoting inclusive agendas and also promoting partnerships. So I have so many things to say, but in terms of partnerships, that is one of the topics that we mentioned here today. You know, my experience with partnerships, with civil society, with governments, is the successful ones are those that are co-created, not used as projects or many points. So if you allow me, I have less than a minute, but I have maybe three shifts that are important for us. One is to move from the consultation and shared leadership between government, civil society, and faith actors, to invest more deliberately in women faith leaders, and also recognize that justice is not a legal process, it's a cultural transformation. And in that context, I think that's, yeah, I will stop here and happy to engage in more conversations later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rodalma, for sharing your reflections. And yes, of course, we do listening to you and the experience you just shared that justice is the beginning of hope, but also dignity, as well as the relationship that we've built. Of course, we also recognize that a lot of systems and structures are failing us, and people run for safety to the faith institution, and that's indeed we've experienced. And thank you also for challenging the non-progressive faith movements or faith institutions, that we need to amplify those and lift those that are progressive, so that we see the shift that is needed in the leadership for access to justice. You will allow me make a little bit of shift into our program. One speaker who should have come much later, and that is Bina Nefram, has requested that we allow her speak because she has another engagement at 10, and it will take about 20 minutes before she gets to the next engagement. So Bina, please, we'd like to invite you. Azza, would you like to introduce Bina? Yes, Bina is, I'll introduce her very briefly. She is an indigenous scholar and women rights defender whose work focuses on deepening democracy and championing women-led peace, security, and disarmament in Manipur, Northeast India, and South Asia. She's currently an SAR fellow at the Harvard Kennedy Schools Center for Human Rights and Policy. Thank you very much for joining us and for being patient.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mayam Bhutaramna Okchari, in my indigenous language, means I pay my obeisance to each and every one. And to my elders and my relatives here, my apologies for breaking the line. But I have an appointment with the mayor's office at 10 on gender issues and taking a delegation of women, so thank you so much. Dr. Azza, thank you for your courage to invite me at the last moment. Really appreciate this inclusion. I will just take a minute because I know how our friends also are joining from around the world. First, recognizing that we are on the ancestral lands of the Lenape people, in which we stand here today, and to our elders past and present. First, as an indigenous woman, we wanted to say that though there are many conflicts that we are discussing, do you know how many conflicts are in the world today? There are many forgotten conflicts which does not even appear in newspapers. So we recorded 130 conflicts, displacing over 200 million people in the world today. And out of this, it shocked us when we did our research. I'm also a scholar by training. Out of this conflicts in the world, 80%, 80, are in indigenous territories. So if you look at Congo, if you look at Indo-Burma, if you look at Sudan, Sahel, these conflict zones, you'll realize that they are located in the most beautiful areas of the world. So we thought, why, where there's forests, rivers, mountain, lakes, where human beings should be enjoying, why there is so much wars? So our forests are mined in money. There are cluster munitions, there are armed drones. So we're talking. So finally, I wanted to share. So when we recognized this, we galvanized. Indigenous people from around the world galvanized for the first global summit on indigenous peace building in 2024 in Washington, D.C., in which we said we have to take action because indigenous people are not there. We say, if we are not at the table, we are on the menu. So we get eaten up. So we said we must. So we formed the Global Alliance of Indigenous Peace Builders, Mediators, and Negotiators. I was very lucky to be invited, thanks to the religious network, to Finland last year to take part in national dialogue process. So important. We are now training indigenous women from around the world, Africa, Asia Pacific, Latin America, here in Northern America, to look at indigenous methods of peace building. Finally, this is one thing which we learned. I've seen indigenous people from around the world, they are from all faiths. In Sahel, our indigenous sisters, Tuareg, Fulanis, many of them have taken all the faiths, all the global faiths are embraced by indigenous people. So one of the solutions that we must go ahead moving forward is to tell the UN States Commission on Women and those working on looking at children in armed conflict, women in armed conflict, is to include indigenous people in the path towards mediation, negotiation processes, and peace building. Because we represent 476 million indigenous people living in 90 countries and territories. Next month, on 24th, 25th, and 26th, here in New York City, at a retreat center where the monks used to live, we're having our second global summit. Please invite to join us. And thank you once again to all the organizers for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you. Another round of applause for her bringing the voices of the indigenous people. And of course, thank you very much for highlighting and mentioning the forgotten crises coming from the East African region and serving as the regional appeal coordinator for ACT Alliance in Uganda, Tanzania, and DRC. I totally resonate and understand where she's coming from when she speaks of forgotten crises. Thank you once again, Pina. We will be moving to break the monotony in the room to the next speaker who is joining us virtually. Christine, are you ready for us? Yeah, the last speaker just spoke into the need for us to reform the global alliances for peace processes, but also mentioning that with 480, 7 to 8 million, that's quite a big number of indigenous women, struggling with issues around access to justice. What are your reflections on that? You have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Switzerland. The crumbling of multilateral engagement can become a kairos for multi-faith engagement. I trust you all have met kairos before. Kairos, also known as the Greek god of the right moment, the decisive moment to act. I see 3 opportunities for our current crises to become a kairos, to act for justice for women and girls in conflict settings. Crisis can become kairos if we first see. We as faith communities need to look into the mirror and see ourselves as who we really are, not as we would like others to see us. And again, I can only speak for my own faith tradition, which is Christian. I currently see, for example, a Christian patriarch, Kirill, who is justifying a war of aggression in the name of a Christian God that countless women and girls suffer from. What I do not see is a collective outcry, at least of the Christian ecumenical community, countering Kirill on his own faith grounds and unmasking his sacralization of the Russian war on Ukraine as heresy and a travesty of the gospel of peace. Second, judge. Once we see ourselves as who we really are, we cannot spare ourselves our own judgment. This means, at least in my tradition, that we repent of our failures and we make efforts to change our ways. We deliberately reach out not only to our own faith communities, which sometimes is difficult enough, but also to our brothers and sisters from others and no faith traditions. I see tens of thousands of faith-based NGOs on this planet that do engage in important humanitarian and peace-building work. What I do not see is a large-scale, systematic and theologically grounded effort to bring these tens of thousands of FBOs together to form alliances with actors from other and no faith tradition. Can you imagine the impact this would have? Very practically on the ground for the girls and women in conflict settings, but also beyond as a powerful symbol of unity in diversity in the midst of increasing polarization of religious conflict and war. This is how we can help our governments create meaningful participation, namely by example. And lastly, act. Please don't misunderstand me. It is not as if we have to start from zero, thank God. We do have wonderful projects of multi-faith engagement. We need to let these people, these initiatives shine, put them in the spotlight, even if it means letting someone else take the glory that we think we would deserve at least as much as them. I also see plenty of conferences, plenty of papers, plenty of think tanks, which is great, don't get me wrong. Yet I also think that maybe we need a few lesser think tanks and more do tanks. Let me close with one example that tries to mirror this trajectory of See, Judge, Act, of intentionally and systematically shining light on multi-faith engagement. I am speaking, if I may, of Lead Integrity, initiated by our wonderfully wise Asa Karam, that brings together women from different faith traditions who seek to jointly see, judge, and act, not least on behalf of women and girls in conflict settings. Examples like this can show how crisis can be turned into kairos. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for doing this. And thanks for the recording that is being done. I promise that I will need to watch again because these are very insightful reflections that you just brought in. And of course, the scrambling of multilateralism should be a starting point for faith to rise. Thank you very much for your reflections. We'll be moving to the next speaker, and that is, who's next? I think I'm moving to Lillian Musochi. Lillian, you just heard this from Christine saying that we need to, do more of the, less of the think tanks and more of the do tanks. So what difference do you think we can make as faith actors in this multilateral system?
Thank you. Greetings from Uganda. You can see by my necklace, home of hospitality. Close to 2 million refugees being hosted currently. And what the multi-faith and interfaith partnerships are doing differently. I'll speak from the view of post-conflict or within conflict itself. I'll say that when we receive refugees, some come walking, others are running, others use air if they are lucky. But majority of these that come walking and use buses are women and children. And so for us at the point of receiving refugees, our celebration is the joint humanitarian assistance that we see, especially in Uganda, that our services to children and women are integrated. Yeah, there is already a very big celebration at that. And some of this we have seen where even the Church of Uganda, for example, the Archbishop, the last emergency we had for the DRC, DR Congo, he made an appeal, but it came at the time when funding had been locked, especially from this other part of the world. And the appeal goes to private sector. So if we are looking at secular, the private sector comes in handy, that we are not only locked to saying the UN, the government, but we are also able to see the resources within. On the other hand of our partnerships are the joint advocacies and lots of communication towards resource mobilization, towards policies that we want to change. Uganda's policy in terms of refugees and conflict, we have an open door. And I'll say that a bird cannot fly with one wing. And that's why for us, these partnerships are integral, both secular and interfaith, to see that whatever problem we have as we are receiving refugees, it's interagency in nature. Irene, I want to stop it at that.
Thank you very much, Lillian, for sharing your reflections, but also bringing in the realities that's happening from your work experience in Uganda in response to the DRC crisis, South Sudan, and Sudan crisis. So I'll be moving to the next speaker, that is Reverend Mark E. Yeah, are you ready for us?
Well, it was bad enough to follow Christine, but now I've got to follow Lillian, so I am as ready as I can be. Good morning, everyone. Excellencies and special friends and dear guests, it's an honor to be here with you today. I'm going to take this so that I can kind of see everybody. I think a couple of things. So I can't help but acknowledge that as we're talking about justice for women and girls from a multi-stakeholder perspective, that we have to address the idea and the concept and the reality that from birth, women and girls are often completely, almost disappeared in the reality of life, that their value, their worth and existence is questioned from the moment they are born. And we're talking about the idea of reimagining society as we know it, which I'm here for. I believe it is a worthwhile entity. But we should not shortchange what we're up against when we're talking about bringing justice and bringing equity to women and girls, not just in conflict situations, but overall walking around on the planet. I do think that when we at Tanenbaum think about what we know of the contributions of women from a multi-stakeholder perspective, our work in our Peacemakers in Action network is to support and uphold the work of religious and spiritually motivated actors, male and female, And that if we're looking specifically at the unique contribution that women can do, there are a couple of examples that we have. So Minister Hind Kabawat, now Minister Hind Kabawat from Syria, at the time of the outbreak of the Syrian war, so as people were fleeing to Turkey and to safety zones in the surrounding countries, in the 4 years after the war, so this is the other thing too, is that people think that war is fast. We actually, we see things in the news, now we see things on social media, and in our minds, we're almost creating a shelf life for how long is this thing going to go on. So the idea of post-conflict is almost a misnomer because we think we know how long a conflict is going to go on. So what we ended up seeing with Hind is that in those first years of the Syrian civil war, what she found herself doing was more of what she had already been doing, which was building interfaith coalition and using her skills as a lawyer and as a conflict resolution practitioner to prepare for the day when the war would end, a date she did not know. And that was at the request of mostly women wanting to go home and wanting to rebuild something that they did not destroy. So in addition to sometimes being on the menu, you end up, and women are often called in to clean up the mess that men have done. I'll say that part, Asa. So what Hind ended up doing was creating an organization called Tastakel and engaged, which we do within our network, what we call interventions. Friar Ivo Markovic, who had done his work during the Bosnian War. And she brought Friar Ivo to the outskirts of Turkey to actually work with people around peace building practices and reconstructed justice so that when the war ended, they would have an action plan. So for me, it's not like a mistake, or it's not just window dressing that somehow Hind ended up being the Minister of Labor and Society when the new government came into being. Now, here's the thing. If we look at governments around the world, they're all a roll of the dice at this point. There's nothing so secure that we can know about how an effective people and institutions will be. But what is clear is that there is a reworking and a re-understanding and a transformation of what it means to be civil in a society and what it means to be a contributing member. From the perspective of multilateralism, that means looking at all of the ways women and girls are disaffected in society and everyone doing their part, not in opposition to another institution or organization. And I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Reverend Mark, for your reflections. And of course, for reminding us that the women are not only on the menu, but also cleaning up the mess in the post-conflict situation and the rehabilitation process. It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. We will be moving to our next speaker, and that is going back online to Hope T. Sisaya from Finchurch Aid. Yeah. South Sudan. Hope, can you hear us?
Live and active.
Amazing. Please, what are your thoughts? Reverend Mark just hit on something that is really touching, and that is the responsibility that lies and the double dynamic of women being on the menu in conflict situation, but also cleaning up the mess created by the men. What are your reflections, and what difference can faith institution make?
I was inspired by what Reverend Mark has just said, because it links to my name, which is Hope. And if we look at the situations of what women go through and girls. I want to clarify conceptually that when we talk about conflict in this context, we are talking of crisis context, violent conflict situations, complex emergent situations, and or contexts in transitions. My colleague from Uganda mentioned about refugees, returnees, IDPs, people on the move, right? I want to situate justice as something that is holistic, community rooted, and also linked to the dignity of people from a representative perspective, but also linked to safety, to the rights of the people and their meaningful participation. So I totally agree, and I'm inspired by what Reverend said. From my experience in Middle East, in Eastern Africa, from DRC, South Sudan, Sudan, Eastern Africa, Rwanda, Burundi, but also Southern Africa from Mozambique, Zimbabwe, is that faith actors are involved in all the spectrum of development, that is humanitarian, peace, and development. And we don't need to distinguish them. And women in all this spectrum are engaged or are affected by whatever process is going through. And I would like to cite how religious actors, and by religious actors, we don't just mean the Christian, Muslim, or Buddhist, but also want to situate the non-Christian, the African-initiated faith, and the traditional faith, how they influence the psyche, the behavior of actors in a context. So it's a bit inclusive. They play a big role, not only in humanitarian negotiation, in peace mediation, but also for ensuring access they ensure that access is there. For instance, locations where some humanitarian agents cannot reach, you would find that local actors, local religious leaders have access to those locations. And where partners cannot access those areas, local religious actors can even provide assessment reports for those locations, can negotiate access, can hold both civilian and military actors for accountable. So for me, I see their key participation as key, as vital. They are essential for peace in this regard, for safety, and also for violence reduction. In my context, we're in South Sudan, they have been involved in civil military dialogues and taking the voices of the women, girls, the people affected at lower level to the national, but also at the international, regional level, where these mediation are happening, be it from the, we can bring sight of independence, agreements, current negotiations, current mediation efforts. And since much has been said about that, I want to also highlight a few aspects on the partnership between the government and the UN, but not just the UN. I want to include development partners, regional bodies, and in this case, in my region, we can include IGAD, African Union, and international partners. The first point is to appreciate and institutionalize the inclusive partnership that exists, but also support that partners, that efforts that is happening for between these actors. I would want to highlight that you'd realize faith actors are very much proactive in unarmed civilian protection strategies at different levels, which are vital. And their support in those efforts is very critical because they are rooted in nonviolence.
Isaiah, I'm sorry to cut you short, but I think I request that you wrap up in 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last point I wanted to highlight from this partnership is to strengthen the efforts that are ongoing for humanitarian peace and development nexus outcomes. And that's what I wanted to highlight. And over to you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much for bringing us online. And we're happy that the network could really allow you to be very clear as though you're in the room. We appreciate your reflections on the role of traditional faith leaders in the humanitarian situation, but also the peace negotiation processes that we've seen work a lot in many contexts. And this will also bring me to the next speaker, who will be speaking from the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, Dr. Mohammed El Sanaisi.
You did very well.
Thank you.
Irene, thank you so much. And thank to you, Irene, as well as to Professor Karam for leading us this morning. Being the last speaker is a good thing. because everything is being said, so I don't need to say anything else. All the points that I actually listed, whether it is trust, whether it is connectivity, whether it's all been basically said, right? So I'm going to leave you with a couple of things. First of all, I just want to also express my gratitude and appreciation to you, Ambassador Kalku, and to the government of Finland, and to the state secretary who just left us for their unwavering support to the network since the inception of the network almost 12 years ago, which enabled us actually to engage religious actors and traditional actors. So thank you for that. And then the second point I want to make, I want to highlight that the first question started with what, right? So we need to actually make that recognition, the recognition of religious and traditional actors and faith-inspired institutions, to recognize their importance and their critical role. That recognition need to happen. So that's the first point I wanna make. And then the second point I wanna make, we need to also acknowledge the knowledge of faith-based institutions and faith-inspired actors on the ground. They know the context better than anybody else. So we need to acknowledge that, the multilateralism as a secular institution. So that's important. And then the third point I want to make is that we also need to acknowledge that faith-based institutions, religious actors, they lack resources as they work on the ground. And I'll give you specific examples. The Amir of Argungu from Nigeria, that Simona and Jessica met when we engaged traditional actors in Abuja. He's Amir, he has about 4 million people in his emirates. He said 80% of the cases actually brought to him, to his palace to resolve. Why? Because the courts cannot do it. The people trust him to resolve problems for the society. But what he was saying, I cannot document all of these precedents because they don't have resources. So recognizing the role, but the lack of resources. So if the Amir is not there, we can't actually go to these precedents, the cases, right? We can do it here. If I'm in the law school, in the library, I can go back to the president, and if something occurred, and go back and benefit from that. Now, the second question, my sister, is start with how, right? One thing I want to make clear here, as we're approaching almost the 2030, the end of the SDGs, and we acknowledge all the SDGs are not realized. And most importantly, SDG number 17, which is talking about partnership, is calling clearly for partnership between government, multilateralism, secular institutions, faith-based, civil society, everyone else. But that is not, I always call this is the mothers of SDGs. Because if we're able to make that partnership, we will be better off today. Now, I want to give you another example, my sister here, and that is regarding the protection of girls and women in conflict zones. When I look into this room here, we have about 80 people in this room. 9 men in this room. 4 of us in the panel. It's the reality. Just look around, right? This is a partnership we need to make, and why I said that, because I want to give you an example. Taking you again to Nigeria, to Plateau State. I met with Imam Abdullah Abu Bakr. He's an 80 years old Imam from Nigeria. The Plateau State is in Nigeria. The governor is a Christian, conservative Christian. When Boko Haram came to the states to basically abduct the girls, he is the one who stood between Boko Haram and 200 Christian girls and women and men. He told the Boko Haram, if you want to take them, you have to kill me first. Late Imam Abdullah just passed away a few months ago, but the Christian conservative governor was recognizing him. These are the championships that we need to promote as we protect girls and women in conflict zones. Back to you, my sister.
Thank you very much. It shows the heart in the last, and you brought in a very interesting testimony of, the situation that's happening in Nigeria. Thank you so much for sharing that, but also for reminding us of the need to recognize the importance of the critical role faith institutions play, acknowledging the knowledge of faith actors in contexts of conflict. Totally agree with you, but also backing them with the resources that is needed, because it's sometimes overwhelming, looking at 80% of cases coming to you, and you can't do much that calls for supporting this intervention. So faith leaders can be able to provide the support needed for survivors to access the justice system that they need. So thank you very much. I don't know how much time we have left, Dr. Azar.
Technically, we're
Sorry.
over time. Okay, technically, we're over time already. Just by a few minutes, right? But I believe that for those who can stay with us a little bit longer, we do have thanks to the American Arbitration Association. Thanks to the American Arbitration Association for this amazing venue. We still have a few more minutes, so please let's use the opportunity to take some questions. We only have 20 questions already that were submitted online, but there are people here who I think would like to perhaps ask a few questions. So Irene, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the assurance that we can actually have maybe 5 more minutes just to take a few questions from the room and maybe 1 or 2 from online. So I'll go by the first 3 questions from the audience. Thank you. Maybe online?
No, there's a lady there.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for the amazing session. I also wish to appreciate the organizers for such a timely and interesting conversation. My name is Ruth Abonobisong, and I'm a Cameroonian based in Cameroon, but I work with the Global Network of Women Peace Builders as the Program Officer for Africa. And the experience I share during panels is not because I work in my capacity as Program Officer, it's because I work as a woman peace builder living in conflict-affected communities. And most of the strategies you've shared, goes back to remind us of how much we are supported by the external community. And most times, even though this support comes, the work in the community remains and the challenges persist. So it is about time for us to, create more space for women, peace builders, and, give most of us support to attend such events because many of us were not able to travel over for CSW. We have a program, a project which we implement in the DRC, sponsored by the Women of Faith. We are supporting women in Congo Central. We help them with economic empowerment activities, skills building, and also showcasing their work through fairs and community initiatives. If not of the partnerships that we have with such a faith-based organization, it would not have been possible for us as a Global Network Women of Peace Builders, Women Peace Builders, to reach out to these women in these communities. So this just goes to strengthen, the fact that partnerships with faith-based organizations is quite critical for the advancement of our work. Thank you so much for the amazing work you're doing within the world generally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your comments. Irene, with your permission, one of the questions that came online repeatedly, which I will read out because there's a request for the panelists to please address it. Support, quote unquote, is often considered as resources, whether technical or financial. In a time of severe collapsing resources, what are examples of sustained long-term quality support that donors and NGOs are providing and that local actors are receiving? It would be good to hear the panelists share some thoughts on continued support that may not be financial. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question from the online participants, and anyone can really respond to this. Thanks.
Thank you. From Uganda Health in Charge 8, to be specific, most of the conversations in terms of solutions is the private sector partnerships. Because if you look at skilling youth, women and girls, for example, if you partner with the private sector, most of the times they'll provide the apprenticeship, and our program also look out for linking learning to earning. We have that very beautiful program. And so an empowered woman is one who has something in the pocket, and the private sector has come in to that because the governments sometimes give conditional grants. I will say that currently the UN has received close to $2 billion US, if I got right, UN OCHA, and it is for 6 months, but it is only to a few sectors. For example, the education sector is excluded. And so we'll have millions of children in Uganda not going to school because the support elsewhere is conditioned or ear-marked, as they say. But private sector seems to be that other partnership that is giving long-term interventions. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Your Excellency.
Thank you. I think we're also talking about not a costly activity here. When we talk about supporting religious actors or women in peace mediation or peace mediation in general, that's one of the most low-cost activities that we can think of. So I think this is also a question of priorities. If you have less funds, how you prioritize your funding. But I think there's also a lot to do. These activities have a lot to do with convening power, where governments, where the UN, UNDP is a co-organizer here, can actually help by providing space, by taking care of the arrangements and bringing people together. And I think that's also an important part of the support.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Yes, Kodama.
Yeah, I would say we need to localize everything in terms of the services that are provided. We need to make a strong reformation of the system as has been built. That is extremely colonial still, and that's fundamental. But not simply transfer responsibility to people, but to reform also in terms of the values that are behind of that. Because that is the big problem that I see in terms of not providing the support that's necessary because of the economic, the confluence of fundamentalism, economic, political, and sometimes religious as well. So that is, I think that we need to be a little bit innovative as well.
Thank you, Delma. Dr. Mohammed, do you have any?
Yeah, just my addition is that yes, resources, external resources are quite critical, but we also, as a faith-based institutions, religious actors, we need to look into our own and start the initiative using our own resources we have. And I can tell you a number of examples on this. During the pandemic, I was looking into the United States, what all faith-based can do. No resources. I brought religious actors around the table and we created what is called Faith for Vaccines, using our own resources. But when they saw us working together using our own resources, it actually, brought the attention of the White House, attention of Facebook, attention of the state and territories organizations, and they all came forward to support us financially, to hire someone to coordinate the initiative, because we just use our own resources when we started. So I wouldn't, if there is a need, let's use our own resources and the external support will come. If there is a need and there is a will, it's going to be that. There is a way, my sister.
Thank you so much for that powerful closing. So let's have Reverend Mark for 30 seconds, thanks.
Just one last thing to add, but I think in terms of the philanthropic landscape combined with the corporate landscape, one of the things that we still find ourselves, at least in the US context, having to deal with is competitive funding versus collaborative funding. And so, very often we may be one of several organizations working on a particular topic and we each have our approach. And there is, I'm going to say, is a little bit of a red herring that there are some funders who want to see people collaborate, et cetera, but they don't want to fund what's necessary. So I think it's important for us to become smarter as independent organizations, NGOs, et cetera, to look for the places where we can collaborate with the public sector, with the corporate sector, and actually scale our combined impact, because we often are kind of thrown into the barrel and everybody's got to kind of come and do their show and dance for $10,000 or $5,000. And, I was classically trained to sing. So if you want me to audition, then I want a full contract. I don't want to audition for the chorus. And so I think it's important that we begin to rethink about how, what our strategy is and what we're going to the table with, because I really appreciate, Mohammed, your, the case study that you presented. And unfortunately, we are often put in the position where these case studies are kind of like, come and do something for free, and then maybe some money will come later. And I can't pay my staff with that.
Thank you very much. And at this point, allow me to appreciate our amazing panelists. Let's put our hands together for them. Very insightful messages, but also reflections. And I'd like to usher them back to their seat, but I'd like to invite my co-moderator, Dr. Azad, to give the closing reflection. Thank you.
Thank you very much once again. Can I please ask Eva, Marita, Rosa, Rachel, Ellie, Janie, Simona, and Nika to please stand up. Now, the full group, the not in today's
retired compensation from the beginning, very much needed. And once again, a sincere thanks to the American Arbitration Association and to my incredible, able colleague, who has been stewarding us throughout all of this. 3 things, please leave reflecting on. You've heard tremendous wisdom today. We have heard that there is no such thing as a deadline for partnerships to save ourselves and those who are much more vulnerable. We have also heard that there are multiple ways to raise resources and that in-kind and examples of doing so together makes a big difference. And we have heard, not least, that the partnerships between one another, different religions, different sectors, at different moments in time, are what we need to overhaul a system that otherwise looks like it is collapsing. If there is one thing you need to take away from this conversation, it is there's tremendous work being done. There's a number of incredible people, often behind the scenes, making things possible. That women and girls are not only vulnerable, they are the actors, the agents, and the realizers of long-term and sustainable peace in our societies. It isn't about a favor to support and to work with them because they're the most vulnerable. They are the most vulnerable, they're also the most capable and competent. And on that note, I want to thank you all for this remarkable amount of heavy lifting, and there's truth to be had thanks to our colleagues from Finchurch Aid. Please help yourselves. And thank you once again. May you be blessed now and always.